What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Dense Pixels podcast, where we will answer a question that we have teased for many, many months at this point. I'm one of your hosts, Brad. We have the whole crew today to argue about pieces of plastic that we touch with our hands. That includes Micah.
Hey.
Carrie.
What's up?
And Terrence.
What's up?
It's a slow news week is what's up, and we haven't really been playing any new shit. So it's time to make good on something that we promised quite some time ago. Today, we are going to do the Dense Pixels tournament of game controllers, where we will definitively decide the best game controller that has ever existed on this mortal coil. So as we go into that, so here's kind of the way it's laid out. There's 20 controllers on this list. Only major first-party console controllers are represented, so no 3DO or Atari Jaguar or anything like that.
No chainsaw controller?
No chainsaw controller, no third-party. No handhelds on this list, home consoles only. We'll probably end up doing a separate handheld argument at some point down the road, I would imagine.
Tournament of handhelds would be
Tournament of handhelds is going to be the thing. And so there's 20 controllers on this list. So 8 of the controllers are having to fight each other in what constitutes a play-in round. I tried to pick the 8 controllers that are objectively the worst to have to earn their way into the tournament proper. And just so that you, dear listener, know that I am not putting my thumb on the scale and influencing this tournament in any way, shape, or form with my bias, I did not force the GameCube controller to play in to the main tournament. That's how much of a straight shooter, respected on both sides, that I am for this tournament. So, but yeah. So and then the top 12 seeds, other than that, were randomized. They were not ranked in any way, shape, or form. So here we go. Let's take a look at this sweet, sweet bracket that if you're watching on YouTube at youtube.com/densepixels, you could be seeing right now. And if you're listening in audio form, we will do our best to describe what is on the scene. So we have our play-in round, where we have the Joy-Cons, the Nintendo Joy-Con controller versus the Duke. We have the original Sega Genesis controller versus the Wii U gamepad. We have the Wii Remote, with or without nunchuck, your choice, against the DualShock 3 controller. And then we have the Nintendo 64 controller against the controller that I put on the list specifically to slag off, and that is the Steam controller. And what better place to start than with that matchup, the Nintendo 64 controller versus the Steam controller. Now,
look,
I gotta tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta tell you, never in my life did I think that I would actually be picking the Nintendo 64 controller to win anything in this tournament until the computer put it up against literally the worst controller known to mankind.
Steam controller's fucking awful. The N64 controller, far from perfect, but it is iconic. In a lot of ways. I don't know. I'm going N64 fucking every time here.
Look, I don't hate the N64 hermaphrodite controller. It's got
Micah,
a dick.
You can't say that.
It's got a dick and a clit.
Micah, it's 2023. We're gonna get canceled. You can't fucking say
No,
that.
we're outside of the first. We're outside of the first minute. It's only the first minute that YouTube really cares about.
Minute?
Yeah, that's what YouTube cares about.
I thought it was like the first three to five.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Look, it is like you said, it's an iconic controller, and I don't hate it. I hate it for certain games, but I don't hate the controller. But it's a marvel in over designing something, and
Much like every Nintendo controller, but
yeah, pretty much.
Starting with this one.
But that Steam controller, look, I haven't used that Steam controller, so that's part of the reason why I'm going N64. But the Steam controller doesn't look like good or intuitive. Or
I have used the Steam controller, and let me tell you something. That motherfucker is like hollow on the inside. Like when you click those like touch dials that the Steam controller has, there's nothing behind them. Like it's just air that you're pressing into. It's crazy. It's terrible.
Yeah, I've never
Easily
touched
the
the Steam
worst.
controller either. It looks weird, but it looks like it should work well for like PC games, right? Because that right little circle is the mouse pad, right? Like a trackpad.
Yeah, like well,
Is that not
they're
what that
both
is?
trackpads. There's little circles on the left and the right on the Steam controller.
Why the fuck would you have that on the? You know what? Whatever. What?
It's real
The
bad.
Steam controller looks like
So that's not a D-pad on the left,
No,
is what you're saying.
yeah,
That's dumb. Well, yeah, go ahead. Nintendo 64 wins. I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, but if that's
Nah.
both trackpads, I'm good.
no.
the Steam controller looks like it's a controller that if you know how to use it, you probably know how to use the 3 seashells. and nobody knows how to use the 3 seashells. So yeah, no, I can't. I can't.
Yeah, it's definitely N64, and again, that just shows you how badly that Steam controller is to lose to a controller that was literally designed with a dick. That's literally that's literally what happened there. So yeah, N64 moves on. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The Wii remote and the DualShock 3. So I purposely left off the 6-axis controller because that controller is a lot of garbage. The DualShock 3, just the 6-axis controller with the DualShock Rumble enabled inside of it. Against the Wii remote, certainly one of the most interesting controllers, especially of its time for you youngins that were not around when the Wii came out. The Wii was something of a marvel
Do you
when it
really
hit the
think
scene.
that there are people that young listening to this show?
When did the Wii come out?
I hate to think that there's some
2006.
prepubescent child out there. No, I mean, look, 2006. So they would be what? They'd be like
17.
17.
There could be
Yo,
17-year-olds
fuck,
listening.
Yo,
fuck that. Yo, if you 17, stop listening. I don't want to talk to you.
There could be 17-year-olds listening to this podcast.
Oh,
I mean, if you're 17, you
Yo, I
probably
am-
know what a hermaphrodite is now. So
Oh man.
17?
All
Are
right.
you
Well,
serious?
Yeah.
the years
Yo.
start coming and they don't stop coming.
Fucking well.
I'm going Wii remote on this, and it's a pretty. The thing for me is it's like the Wii remote obviously is a weird little thing, but it was the first controller to like really lean hard into motion controls and really like set shit sort of on fire in that regard. It made things accessible to a lot of different people in ways that other controllers typically were not. It made certain games very easy to pick up and play. I mean, without the simplicity and the motion controls of the Wii remote, the Wii would probably not be anywhere near the success that it ended up being.
Mhm.
And the fact that the Wii remote introduced motion controls in a way that obviously far from perfect, but in a way that both Microsoft and Sony both ended up trying to emulate in their own ways, I think goes a long way to say that, like, yeah, this was a successful and influential piece of technology that Nintendo released alongside the Wii console. The DualShock 3 was a 6-axis with rumble enabled, and I personally have never been the biggest fan of Sony's controllers in general. The DualShock 3 is not, in my opinion, markedly different from the DualShock 2s, and I think was not nearly enough of an improvement over them to be memorable or remarkable in any sense. So it's the Wii for me.
Okay.
I agree. The DualShock 3 was just for me an iteration of a classic, right? When Sony was in there, if it ain't broke, don't fix it phase. But the Wii remote, by the simple fact of its like, it broke barriers, right? Like it was able to bring people who don't play games, allow them to play games, right? It's with the simplicity of like everyone's held a remote control, a TV remote control in their hand. Yeah, I just the fact that you're that it made people who weren't gamers gamers, and it's quite frankly it's groundbreaking. Versus a controller that is, you know, some kind of iterations on an established, like well worn thing. So it's the Wii remote for me.
Whatever. Like here's my thing is like, and when you put it like that, I guess it's. I never like. I look. I had a Wii for like 3 months. Because there were certain games that I wanted to play on it, but like I didn't. I didn't use the Wii remote to play those games. The fuck? Like if I would play Wii bowling and tennis, yeah, sure. But like everything else, it was a piece of shit for everything else. But I mean, if you're like old folks being able to play Wii bowling and all that other shit, fine. I don't consider them. I mean, they're games, but like you just swing your arms around.
Oh, don't look,
I'm going,
Terrence.
but,
This is the end of charity. This is the end of charity for me.
like, I mean, I guess if you're going for like inclusion, the Wii remote wins. But like the DualShock 3 is basically what the PlayStation controller has been for the last 20 years.
I
So
have to
I don't see the difference between DualShock 4 or DualShock. It just felt like toys.
I have to disagree with all of you. You guys are sitting here saying that like, oh, the DualShock 3 is just Sony taking what worked before and just continuing it onward. And you could not be more wrong. The DualShock 3 is Sony taking what worked about the DualShock controller and making it worse. Like it's 10 times worse. Like the triggers, the two buttons on the shoulder, terrible. Like they sloped downward towards the controller. Like they didn't flare. Yeah, they didn't flare. Like I literally had to buy a third party attachment to make those triggers functional. In games,
yeah, you had to buy a clip or something to put on
this was the introduction of the meme of bad Sony controller battery life, because the DualShock 3 was the first wireless rechargeable Sony controller, and it had the worst battery life of all the ones that have come since. And it was built poorly. Like the other DualShock controllers were kind of built like a tank. And then this was like the most flimsy piece of shit controller that I've ever seen in my entire life.
This was the one that felt like
this was the one that was super light.
Oh yeah, yes. I didn't like that shit at all. Ugh.
Yeah. This is a terrible controller, and the Wii remote is at least a functional controller. So therefore the
DualShock 3 is just
The Wii remote is the winner, hands down. The DualShock 3, a terrible, terrible controller, the worst controller that Sony has ever put out by a long shot. So this is interesting. The Sega Genesis, the original 3-button Genesis controller, versus the Wii U gamepad controller. Carrie, I feel like, is going to have the most to say.
No. It's the Genesis controller wins.
All right.
The Wii U gamepad, are you serious? Come on. Granted, when the Genesis came out, all you needed was 3 buttons until like Street Fighter came out, and then you had to press like the select button to.
You had to hit the modifier button.
But I had the 6 buttons. That was terrible. But everything else, the 3-button controller. Yeah, no. This is not up for discussion.
I'm gonna say it is. Terrence.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna say it is. Look, I like the Genesis controller. I like the shape. I like the slope of the Genesis controller. I don't mind using the 3-button controller in instances where it is appropriate to have the 3-button controller. That being said, I prefer the 6-button controller, and I'm gonna go ahead and defend the gamepad. The Wii U is a flawed system in many ways, and the gamepad didn't help much. But what I will say about the gamepad is it essentially caused the Wii U to function like an oversized DS, because it was a touchpad screen, which I think some people forget about. And the way that particularly a lot of the first party games were designing games around the use of the gamepad was like innovative and clever and smart. The other thing that, like, as someone who played a lot of games on the Wii U appreciated, when I was living with roommates and whatnot, a lot of games I could throw the whole game directly into the gamepad and wouldn't need to use the television. So like I could be playing Mario Kart 8 just on the gamepad screen and still be having a fun fucking time while my roommates use the TV for something else. Um, and there's not a single other controller that they've put out that anyone's put out that does this. The Wii U gamepad in a lot of ways was very much like a early alpha build of the Switch. Like the idea that eventually became the Switch exists within the Wii U gamepad. Um, so I think based on innovation and the technology within it, I'm going to give it to the Wii U gamepad because the original Genesis controller was flawed enough that they needed to release an updated version with 3 more buttons.
You know how they say like certain things had to walk so that something else could run. Essentially, the Wii U gamepad had to fall out of the crib and hit its head on the floor so the Nintendo Switch could run.
Yeah.
But that said, it never like I've used the Wii U gamepad a lot, and it never felt good in the hands ever. Never ever felt good in the hands, which is not something I would say about the Genesis controller. The Genesis controller, even the original, felt great in the hand. Also had the octagonal D-pad, which I think is a feature that it's weird that never like really showed up post Saturn on any of the major consoles really. Which I always thought was a little goofy because I thought that was a pretty cool feature, a little bit underrated. So I would actually go for the Genesis controller in this particular matchup.
I concur. Sorry,
That's why
I think
I wasn't expecting to win this.
I mean, I think Nintendo would have got to the Switch eventually.
You're probably right.
Right.
I had to put out my fucking defense for the gamepad here.
I got you.
That I will say about the other thing that I don't like about the Wii U gamepad is that there's way too much real estate underneath the buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, yeah, if it's going to be a handheld, let it be a handheld. But
yeah,
you got the analog sticks all the way at the top. You got the triggers, and then you have the buttons and the D-pad there, and you've got like 3 inches of space below your hands. That feels weird. That's why the Duke probably won't win this round coming up because it was very similar.
Well, so a literal David versus Goliath matchup here as we go with the Nintendo Joy-Cons.
Because the Joy-Cons are very small and the Duke is real big.
Against the Duke, aka the original Xbox controller.
Oof.
Known for its girth. Massive girth in the hand.
Yeah, the Duke, look, I never owned an original Xbox, so much of my experience playing on a Duke controller came from playing at friends' houses or like fucking demo unit at the EB Games House and Town Center. And I never liked the Duke. And I think the fact that literally every fucking controller since then has kept the same basic shape but slimmed it down and made it significantly more ergonomic in the hands goes to show that like the Duke was an interesting first effort for a company that was breaking into the games business for the first time at that time. I think the fact that the Duke has sort of become a meme speaks to its quality. The Joy-Cons they're like Wii remotes, but they're smaller. Now, is there an issue with Joy-Con drift? Yes, there is. I personally have been fortunate enough to not have really experienced Joy-Con drift, but it is an issue, and that sucks that happens to quite a lot of people. But I like the Joy-Cons. They're Wii remotes, but slightly more compact, and they get the job done, and they're more accurate in terms of motion control and the very hyper-specific haptic feedback that's present in the Joy-Cons is something that maybe like really just like the DualSense is replicating these days, but I'm giving it to Joy-Cons.
I've only I've only held I've only held 2 BBCs in my life.
Shut up, nigga. I don't even like stop. I don't even.
And one of them is the big black controller known as the Duke. Yeah, look.
Oh, I fucking hate you guys.
Look, yes, the Duke is big. The Duke is it's comically big. It's like holding a Mr. Potato Head, right? And trying to play game on it. But you know, personal preference is I prefer the bigger like controller for my hands as compared to the Joy-Cons. Not too big, right? Like the Duke is way too big. But the Joy-Cons are way too small. And they don't. Yeah, I can't. And like you said, the drift, like the Duke worked. Like it's it's huge.
I can't fucking argue with that. Like,
like it's huge, right? But it worked and it got the job done. And as much as I was making fun of the fact that you said that the Wii U gamepad had to, come out so that the Switch it had to fall and bust its head on the crib so that the Switch could be born. Yeah, the Duke had to do the same thing. But yeah, no, I can't. The Joy-Cons are too. No, I tried. I tried with the Joy-Cons. I can't. They're just way too small.
The biggest issue I had with the Duke, I got my hands are like average size. The biggest problem that I had with the Duke was the buttons, those weird ass oblong, small fucking buttons on the gigantic
white and black
controller.
The white and black,
and then they had the white and black at the top. Like, why?
If you recall, the Duke did not have the white and black at the top. They had it below the face buttons. It wasn't until the Slim came out that they moved them to the bumpers.
I think that. Are you sure? I think that's
pretty sure.
I think it's the other way around, isn't it?
No, I'm pretty good. Well, the S controller didn't have the real estate to put those buttons down there. Only the massive handholds of the Duke could accommodate 2 buttons at the base of your palm for some reason, because they thought that was a good idea.
I thought, I'm looking at the. I'm looking at it. It's the opposite. Like,
oh, really?
White and black buttons are up at the top.
No, I always thought that was the. I always thought that was the other way around.
The Slim
put them at the bottom, right?
The Slim put them on the bottom, and they did the accurate like north, south, east, west placement, whereas the Duke, they look like they needed a V8. Like it was just
they were just weird. They were like weird oblong, but I'm like, they're so small for this gigantic. Like you would constantly press 2 buttons at the same time because they're so close and they were so small. And
you're looking at the. Oh no, I guess you are right. Yeah, because I'm looking at it now too. I'm mistaken apparently. So
and the Joy-Cons I've used like twice and they're too small.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I just don't like very small controllers.
It's tough because I didn't really use the Duke to play games. Yeah, it's a tough one for me.
Like I had an Xbox when it came out with the Duke when the Duke controller first came out, and I got used to it. But it was just like holding. It was just weird. I might as well have been holding a handheld with that.
I think the drift issue being so prevalent on the Joy-Cons is what kind of knocks it back for me behind the Duke in this case. I think if the drift issue wasn't like so widespread that I could make the argument for the Joy-Cons, even though that I have a lot of problems with them generally, like the buttons on the face are way too tiny, and and also the way that you hold it in like the Joy-Con cradle when you have it off the system, like makes your hands way too close together. And the fact that they're just like completely flat on the backside, like there's no rounding to really get your hands on it. And I guess I understand why they did it. But it's just too many flaws add up to me in the design. Whereas the Duke's biggest flaw is just that it's enormous. Like it, but the layout of the controller is sound. So we will give the Duke the pass in where it will probably lose in its next matchup, considering who it's going to be going. Well, maybe we'll see. We'll see. It's a very interesting top of the bracket here. So we have completed the play-in rounds. So we have our official Sweet 16. So we will take a look here at the Sweet 16, which has the Xbox Series controller, which is the most recent Xbox controller, versus the Duke. We have the Xbox One controller versus the original Xbox Slim controller, the Duke's successor. Very interesting matchup. The NES versus the Genesis. We have the GameCube versus the Genesis / Saturn 6-button controller. We have the Xbox 360 versus the Wii Remote. The DualShock 4 versus the Dreamcast.
I don't even understand how the fuck the Dreamcast was made. I loved my Dream, but anyway.
The SNES controller versus the N64. And the matchup we're going to save for last in the Sweet 16, the DualShock versus the DualSense controller. So we will save that for the end. And let's start at the top with, so we were just talking about the Duke. How does the Duke compare to the current crop?
It fucking sucks compared to the current crop. The Xbox Series controller is great. I literally have one right here. I use it for like all my PC games. It's a perfect controller. There really isn't anything I would change about this. I fucking love this thing. Yeah. I don't own an Xbox, but like I fucking love Xbox controllers, man. So it's the Series for me, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get much argument here.
This is like comparing modern man to.
In the same vein, I feel like we're going to have the same fate here because we have the Xbox One controller versus the Xbox Slim original controller. It's kind of the same conversation, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, like the Xbox One controller, I had one for a long time. Actually, still, is this an Xbox One controller? Yeah, I think it is. It's got dust on it, but like I used this until it like stopped fully functioning, basically. Yeah. Yeah,
I think the Slim controller was an improvement over the Duke generally, but yeah, it does not compare to the modern foibles. So this one's interesting. NES, the OG, as it were, versus the original 3-button Sega Genesis controller. I gotta tell you,
when's the last time you held an NES controller?
It's been a while. It's been a while, and this is exactly where like, you know, nostalgia can tint your views possibly.
On raw ergonomics, I'm gonna go Genesis because like the NES controller, it's small and it's got all those fucking right angles. Like it's not comfortable to hold for an extended period of time. The Genesis, even the original Genesis controller, is comfortable to have in the hand for an extended period of time.
Yep, I agree 100%. Like I don't know the last time you held one of those Nintendo controllers. It's gross. Like it is. It's very small. 2 buttons, and again, you've got like angles poking you in your fucking hand, and just no.
I will say it is kind of amazing that a square, pointy sided controller should not have worked, and yet it did because we didn't know any better.
It was a step up from the fucking Atari controller, which I'm surprised wasn't on this list, which was a fucking joystick and 1 button. So a D-pad and 4 buttons was
That's right.
Crazy.
Got the job done.
But like we all had to start somewhere, right? Like everything had to begin somewhere. The NES is a classic for many reasons.
I think
Genesis
that
is simply better.
I think that it's incredible that like the select button not only was a thing, but it somehow persisted all the way into like the PlayStation 3 era of controllers when its actual utility like went away a long time before they got rid of it. Yeah, I'm with Carrie as far as the reasoning. I think ergonomically the Genesis controller is just better. The button's a little bit bigger. The D-pad certainly a step up over the NES controller. But I will say, NES controller does have that iconic aesthetic design that is irreplaceable. I feel, but I will also pick the Genesis controller as my vote.
I was a Nintendo kid growing up, man. And back when I was a child and had fanboy like tendencies, when I was a child, no one outside of childhood should be picking corporations that they want to beat the drum for. But when I was a child, I was a Nintendo kid. I love my Nintendo. And Brian, who lived on the other block, he had a Genesis. I'm like, fuck you, Brian. Right?
Are we talking about
But
it? And that's wait. So how long did you have the Nintendo?
I had it in '85, and
Yeah, okay.
and I
Yeah,
had
we're
it
old as
till
fuck.
yeah,
That's when I got mine.
yeah, yeah, and and I had it for a while, and then and Brian up the street had a Genesis, and of course this was after the Super Nintendo and all that came out, and I hated Sega. It's like Sonic. What kind of mascot is that? Sonic. Screw that guy, right? But I secretly wanted one, and and I'm not gonna lie, like as much as it pains the child in me to pick a Sega controller over a Nintendo controller. Yeah, you're right, Like it's just I like it's like playing games on a phone now, and I don't like playing games on a phone. So the Genesis controller goes with it.
All right, I'm gonna need you guys to give the rational defense for the GameCube controller because I'm not capable of it. The GameCube controller versus the Genesis 6-button controller.
Oh, I'm with you, Brad. That's fucking.
I'm
The
gonna
GameCube
need
controller was.
you. I'm gonna need you, Carrie, to give the rational.
Convince us.
Like the
Sway us to
I
your side of the
know
argument.
I'm not going to convince you guys that the 6-button Genesis is going to win this. Like, I understand that. That being said, I think the GameCube controller is a perfect, weird little controller. I love it so much. I love that the C-stick can, like, do a million different things in addition to, like, just functioning as your right hand analog stick. I like that your A button is the biggest button there. Like, so, cause like, I don't know about you guys, but I drive myself fucking insane going between an Xbox controller and my Switch Pro controller because the A and the B buttons are flipped between the two. And, I'm a stupid bitch and I need visual cues, like a slightly bigger button. Um, I like that it's colorful. I like that it's whimsical compared to, everything else that was out at that time, which was just black controllers. The Wavebird was, your first wireless controller. I still have one. Also, like, god damn, like GameCube controllers could take a beating in a way that few other controllers since then have been able to.
That whole system could take a beating.
Yo, the GameCube was
Honestly,
pretty
it was a
fucking
fucking
indestructible. Yeah, I don't know. I like the GameCube controller. I think it's iconic in its own weird and wonderful little way. I think the fact that they continue to put out new GameCube controllers today in the year of our Lord 2K23 says everything you need to know about the staying power of the GameCube controller. And I think the Genesis 6-button is fine. I don't have anything against it. I like.
Since it's about to make its departure from this tournament, let me just list all the dumb things about the GameCube controller. Analog triggers, stupid. One shoulder bumper button, stupid.
Thank you.
Tiny little B button, stupid. X and Y buttons surrounding the giant A button, stupid. C stick,
No,
shitty nipple.
Stupid. No.
tiny D-pad, dumb.
No. You just have big hands and you can't appreciate these fine little intricacies.
The game, I can summarize it in one word: unnecessary. I don't know what the fuck Nintendo was on when they created this controller, but like the entire design of it is completely unnecessary. Like I watch a lot of documentaries and all that other shit. I've never heard anyone explain why the fuck they put the buttons the way they did. Do
Look,
you know why they did it? Because
no,
it doesn't
I
make
don't.
any fucking
I don't
sense.
fucking know.
Like
But
none.
it is, however, the next evolutionary step after the N64 controller.
Yeah, yeah. Nintendo, they're a quirky band of folks over there. Because
They
this is
are.
one of the dumbest controllers I've ever seen in my entire life. And
Whatever.
I've
It's
never
fine. It's a
understood
great
it.
controller.
I don't
You
get it.
three have no taste whatsoever. Put the Genesis through to the next round. Moving on. Fucking hate
Like
you
I
guys.
like functionality over form when it comes to my
the
controllers.
only thing I
The
liked
thing is-
about the GameCube controller is that the C stick and the D-pad were kind of on these little cutouts that were like inset. So I like the design of the controller, like from a silhouette standpoint,
Oh,
but
it just
from
like it fits so perfectly in my
yeah.
hands. Oh god, I love the GameCube. Love the
Yeah.
GameCube controller. You guys have no
man.
taste.
Nah, yo,
a weird
we just
controller,
we
man.
just we just like things that taste good. Get out of
So this next match,
Beat your ass one of these days.
this next match pits perhaps the most innovative controller in many ways against the controller that became like the blueprint, the template for game controllers going forward. This is the Xbox 360 controller versus the Wii remote.
Yeah, my pick.
I mean, look,
Like again, I think we can skip this one.
No, I don't think we can. And the reason why I don't think we can is because the Xbox 360 controller is like such a middle of the road controller. The other thing about the 360 controller is whenever I think of it, I think of like the fucking grimiest looking controllers on earth. Every nasty son of a bitch that sweats. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. The grossest controllers we all ever saw at GameStop were all gray 360 controllers that sweaty dudes had been sweating into for years at that point. That stench don't come out. That discoloration cannot be fixed. That's not like the SNES fucking bromine situation where people have come up with a cleaner for it. Nah, that stank is in there for good. The 360 controller, it set a template for the Xbox One and, Series S, X controllers and whatnot. And that's all fine and good, and I appreciate it for that. But everything since then has been such an improvement, and I think that in general, like it was a step. It was the next logical step from the Duke and the Slim controller. It wasn't doing anything special or out of the ordinary. It was simply just like, here's a slightly different variation on the same design, except now it's gray and nothing you do will ever make it look clean. And the Wii remote was new and innovative and fresh and did everything differently. It was a complete departure from the GameCube controller in every sense of the word. And so that's why I think they should go to the Wii remote and not the 360.
I have my issues with the 360 controller, but I do prefer it over the Wii remote. When it's time, when it comes down to it, I just want to play some games at this point. Like, I appreciate the Wii remote for everything that it has done, but that's just not how I play games. It is not the human machine interface that is optimal for playing the games that I like to play. So yeah, my vote is 360 controller.
I'm looking at the original 360 controller. I think it's kind of ugly.
I
the
look,
design.
Yeah, it is.
I actually,
ugly.
it's not a stretch for me to say I hate the original 360 controller.
Yeah.
It's pretty ugly.
It has
But
the
it's
worst.
still,
It has the worst D-pad of
It
any
is.
controller
Yeah, I
in the
was about to
entire
say the same
world.
thing.
I was going
horrible.
to save that for the next round. But
Yeah, it has the worst D-pad. They didn't like the analog sticks were just not, they just didn't feel good, and the rims got rubbed off of them like immediately.
Oh my
Like,
god! Like,
on every single one. The triggers, while the best of its day, in retrospect, not so good. The triggers have come a long way since then, and the bumpers never felt very good either. The bumpers also were very prone to breaking. I feel like you guys, I'm sure, saw plenty of controllers come through with like the squishy bumpers in the GameStop days in 360. And say what you will about the Wii Remote, well designed perfectly for what its intended purpose was.
You could
for.
literally throw it through a television, and
You could literally throw it through a TV, and it would be fine. And I hate, but that being said, like the 360 controller also is like literally the blueprint for every controller that has come since then. Like I'm surprised Sony hasn't just given up the ghost at this point and just been like, fine, we'll offset the analog sticks. Like, we're fucking tired of hearing about it. Like, we'll fucking do it. So it's tough for me. My heart says the Wii Remote, but I don't think that we would be looked at seriously if we picked this over the 360 controller.
We're not looked at seriously anyway, Brad.
We are trying to figure out the definitive controller here. The definitive controller. Yes, we are.
Well, I will say this: you don't need what is effectively a seatbelt for the 360 controller. So it's and
yeah, but you did need a kill switch. had the breakaway cables.
Look, yeah. So are we at an impasse?
I feel like we are. So I don't know how to decide this. We didn't come up with like a tiebreaker rule.
But you just said your heart says Xbox 360.
No, my heart says Wii Remote. My head says Xbox 360. Logically, 360 should win.
Yeah, logic always wins.
Look, he's appealing to my logistician side. I'm just saying.
Right? Come on, man.
You got to believe in the heart of the cards, Brad. Like,
who believes in feelings over facts? Religious people.
That's true.
Well,
the definitive, Mike has made the definitive argument. I can't fight it. Don't worry, it's gonna get fun. The 360 is gonna have an uphill battle, I think, regardless of which.
Oh boy.
Of which.
I'm saying Dreamcast. Fuck y'all.
Yeah, DualShock 4 versus Dreamcast.
I'm going Dreamcast.
I gotta tell you.
Explain.
I gotta tell you something.
No, I'm not going to explain.
I gotta tell you something. So we really liked the DualShock 4 when it came out, right? And during the whole time we had the PS4. And then the DualSense came out, and I was like, oh, actually the DualShock 4 might have actually kind of been a piece of shit. Like the DualSense is superior in like every way, shape, and form. And it took another controller coming out to really crystallize that for me. So despite despite the fact that the Dreamcast controller is giant and unwieldy,
but it's also very light.
It is.
I have played a Dreamcast recently. I spent an extensive amount of time playing Crazy Taxi on the Dreamcast while drunk at MagFest, and